Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk about spirituality in the natal chart. Somebody mentioned they were curious about spirituality in the natal chart and kind of how to look for spiritual markers, if you will, or something along those lines is what I think they were curious about. First I want to start out by saying that all of the signs, regardless of what's going on in your chart, we're all spiritual beings. We all are. So the notion that something is more spiritual than another, well, yes, there are certainly things in a natal chart that might incline somebody to be more spiritual than somebody else, or to embrace spirituality more than somebody else. We are all spiritual, so I don't want anybody taking away like, oh, well, she didn't say anything that had anything to do with things going on in my chart. So, you know, I don't want anybody to think that if you're not heavy in a certain sign, or if you don't have planets in a certain house, or what have you, that I'm saying that you're not spiritual. We are all spiritual beings. But some people do have perhaps an easier time, or something like that, to actually be able to tap into this. So I guess that's kind of where I wanted to start. Now, I think this video might actually end up being 2 videos, because I'm looking at all the fucking star cards that I have laid out. I'm like, this might be longer than 14-15 minutes. So, so I think we'll start with the signs. Now, signs, you know, in the signs, the planets, the houses, the signs are how something is expressed. So when it comes to spirituality, there are signs, certain signs, that I do find tend to be more inclined to be spiritual for whatever reason, or lean into that spirituality. Okay, so I figure everybody's gonna know that anybody that knows a little bit about astrology is probably gonna know that I'm gonna say Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. All of these are water signs. This does give like an inclination towards spirituality. It does. Towards being intuitive, towards sensitivity, towards all of those kinds of watery things. So if you have a lot of planets in, say, Cancer or Scorpio or Pisces, you might have an easier time leaning into this. Doesn't necessarily mean that you like it or that you're comfortable with it, but it might be easier for you to lean that way. It could be. Anyway. I also like to throw in Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius because because Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces are the last 4 of each's element. Last fire sign, last earth sign, last air sign, last water sign. Pisces being the last water sign. There is a more universal feeling to how all of these different sign energies apply themselves, and the universalness can kind of lend itself to spirituality, to being more spiritual, if you will. Generally speaking, there's also a little bit more maturity to them because they are the last 4 of each element, which I think also can kind of incline itself to spirituality too. I hope I'm explaining this well, but I have always thought of those 3 along with Pisces, Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius as being just more universal energy, therefore perhaps having an easier time tapping into that spirituality if they want to, since spirituality is a universal concept as well. There is something universal about it too. Now, of course, all of this will depend very much on, where these signs fall in the chart, what house cusps they're on, and everything. Will give you an idea of what areas of life they play out in, and any planets that fall in these signs will also give you an idea of what is going on, since planets are what, and houses are areas of life. To, use that little formula, if you will. Now, that doesn't mean that the other sign energies aren't spiritual too, at all. Any sign can be spiritual. I do believe that any of them can be. But these are the ones that, like, off the top of my head, that feel like they probably can tap into it the most. Now we'll talk about the houses. The houses that to me feel the most spiritual in nature are the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house. And I would also throw the 9th house in there. Now, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th, these are all, you don't have to think of natural rulership. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's fine. But they do have an affinity for the water signs. They do. 4th house has an affinity for Cancer. 8th house has an affinity for Scorpio. 12th house has an affinity for Pisces. So there is a spiritual element, there is an underlying, since I think of those signs as being more spiritual in nature. Those houses also have that same feeling. The 12th house is a very, very spiritual house as it is. The 12th house is a lot of things. I have a video on the 12th house. It's a lot of things. It can also be some really not so great things, but it is a spiritual place. So definitely any planets in the 12th are going to, what needs to be expressed. They are going to perhaps be expressed in more spiritual areas of life, if you will, in that realm. The 8th house is a lot of things as well. I also have a video on the 8th house. To me, it's like the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. 12th house is unconscious. 4th house is deeply conscious. It's like conscious at your core, conscious. It may not be things you share with other people, but you are conscious of them. And the 8th house is kind of like the bridge between the two. So there is something inherently spiritual about that bridge, about bridging the two, about bridging those two worlds. Definitely feels that way to me. And then the 4th house, because it is so deeply personal, so deeply conscious, does feel like it could be spiritual too. Of course, whatever sign is on the house cusp of these will give you an idea of like how these play out, and if this fits for you or for the chart that you're looking at. The 9th house, though, should also be thrown in. This house has an affinity for Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius can be, or 9th house Sagittarius, you can be dealing with things like religion. Religion, dogma, that's not really spiritual. That's not really spirituality. Let me take that back. Dogma is not spiritual. Religion can be spiritual. It depends on how you do it. It depends on how the person rolls with this. Because I do think that there are religious people that are actually spiritual, but I think that there are also a lot of religious people that get too into their fucking dogma and they lose the spirituality. Now, if they're going that way with religion, it's not spiritual. However, if they're able to blend, you know, if they're able to still be, if they're able to let go of the dogmatic shit and be religious if they need to be, the spirituality is able to come through. The ninth house is also pretty metaphysical, and obviously metaphysics is spiritual too. It really depends on how the person works their ninth house. That for sure matters here. That's going to matter a lot. Now, you'll also want to look at whatever sign is on these house cusps, say the 12th, the 8th, the 4th, and the 9th. Whatever sign is on those house cusps, you'll want to look to see where that planetary ruler falls. Like, let's say you've got let's say you've got the ruler of the 9th house in the 12th, the planetary ruler of the 9th house in the 12th, or the planetary ruler of the 9th house in the 8th. Okay, that might, if I was looking at a chart like that, that might incline me to think that this person that I'm looking at might be a little bit more spiritual. Perhaps. It does, you'd have to take the entire thing into account, but my mind might go that way. Versus, say, somebody that had, the planetary ruler of the 9th house in, I don't know, the third. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. That doesn't mean, I'm not trying to say that somebody who has a planetary ruler of the 9th house in the third isn't spiritual. I'm not trying to say that. But that's how my mind kind of connects. When I look at a chart, I'm like, okay, let's lay this out. Let's look at this. And start making connections in different themes in the chart. But yeah, I guess also the 9th house. For the 9th house, it would depend on where the planetary ruler falls as to maybe which way I would go with it. Would I think the person might go a more dogmatic religious approach, or would they go more like a spiritual religious approach or a metaphysical approach? It would just depend on everything going on. I'm going to stop this one. I'm going to do the planets and some other things in the next video, because this one's getting kind of long and I'm going to run over. But if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Talk with Astrology. I'm at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Paterno Astrology on Instagram. If you want to like or subscribe or whatever the fuck people do with videos on YouTube, you can find us by searching for Let's Talk with Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Talk with Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letstalkwithastrology.com/star-cards. Oh, and this week I will be at, yours truly will be at Paranormal Playland in San Antonio on October 28th from 6 to midnight. If you are in the area and you want to come hang out, get a reading from me or get a tarot card reading from somebody else or whatever, they're going to have a lot of shit going on. So come check it out. All right, I'll see y'all later.